I cannot choose you as my queen. The words fell from Alpha King Cassian Veilheart's lips, and the entire Silvercrest Hall went silent. Elena Whitmore stood beneath the ancient crystal lights, her hands folded calmly in front of her, even as the mate bond between them burned like a secret the whole world could feel. For one impossible moment, everyone expected the Alpha King to step forward, to claim the bond, to accept the Omega who had been chosen by fate itself. Instead, Cassian looked away. The bond may exist, he said, his voice steady and controlled, but a kingdom cannot be ruled by destiny alone. A whisper moved through the gathered pack members. Some looked at Elena with pity. Others looked away, as if her rejection was something uncomfortable they did not want to witness. Elena had spent years hearing that an Omega's greatest value was being chosen. But standing there in the heart of Silvercrest, she realized something painful. Being chosen by a king who did not see her was not the same as being valued. Cassian remained still on the royal platform, wearing the silver crown that represented generations of Alpha rulers. To everyone watching, he looked exactly like the leader they expected him to be. Calm, unshaken, certain, but deep inside, something felt wrong. His wolf, the part of him that had always obeyed without question, resisted. It recognized Elena. It knew the truth his mind refused to accept. She was his mate. Elena took a slow breath and lowered her eyes, not in defeat, but in acceptance. I understand, Your Majesty, she said softly. Her voice was gentle, but there was a strength in it that surprised everyone. I hope you find the future you believe you need. Cassian expected anger, tears, a demand for an explanation, anything that would make his decision easier to defend. But Elena gave him none of that. She simply turned around and walked away. Each step carried her farther from the throne, farther from the pack that had watched her lose everything she thought she was meant to have. Outside the castle gates, the cold Colorado night surrounded her. The massive stone walls of Silvercrest stood behind her like a reminder of a life that was never truly hers. Elena touched the small silver pendant around her neck, the only thing left from her family's hidden legacy. For years, she had kept her abilities secret. She had hidden what made her different because the world had always feared Omega power. But now, after being rejected by the one person who should have understood her, she wondered if hiding had only allowed others to decide her worth. Inside the castle, Cassian watched from the window as Elena disappeared into the darkness. He told himself he had made the right choice. A king needed strategy. A king needed control. A king could not allow emotions to rule him. But then something happened that no one in Silvercrest had ever seen before. His wolf refused to settle. The ancient bond between them pulled painfully against his chest, stronger than any command, stronger than any crown. And for the first time in years, Cassian Veilheart felt something he had never allowed himself to feel. Regret. Because the woman he had just rejected was the only person who had ever looked at him, not as a king, not as an alpha, but as a man. And he had just let her walk away. 3 days after Elena Whitmore left Silvercrest, the castle felt different. No one could explain it, but everyone noticed. The halls were still filled with the same footsteps, the same royal meetings, the same guards standing at the entrance, yet something important was missing. Alpha King Cassian Veilheart sat at the long council table, listening to reports from every corner of the territory, but his attention kept drifting. The northern packs have sent their concerns again, Beta Mason Blackwood said carefully. The balance between the territories has become uncertain. Cassian looked up. Uncertain? We have handled greater challenges than this. Mason studied him for a moment before answering. Yes, Your Majesty, but we have never handled them without Elena. The room became quiet. Cassian did not respond immediately. He disliked how often her name had started appearing in conversations since she left. He disliked even more that every mention reminded him of what he had ignored. Elena had never held a royal title. She had never demanded influence. She had simply walked through Silvercrest with kindness, helping injured wolves, calming disputes between pack members, and listening when others were too proud to speak. Cassian had mistaken her gentleness for weakness. Now he was beginning to understand that he had been wrong. She was an Omega, one council member said. Her absence should not affect the stability of the pack. Mason turned toward the speaker. That is exactly the kind of thinking that caused this problem. Cassian raised his hand, ending the argument. He looked toward the empty chair beside the throne, the place reserved for the future queen of Silvercrest. For the first time, that chair did not look like a symbol of power. It looked like a reminder. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away from the castle, Elena was building a new life in a small mountain town. She worked quietly at a local healing center, helping families from different packs who needed guidance. She never spoke badly about Cashin. She never told anyone that the Alpha King had rejected her in front of everyone. When someone asked why she left Silvercrest, she simply smiled and said, "Sometimes walking away is the only way to remember who you are." But Elena carried a secret she had protected for years. Her family line was not ordinary. The Whitmore bloodline had once been connected to the oldest guardians of the werewolf world. Their gift was not about power or control. It was about understanding the bond between wolves and their people. Elena had hidden it because she knew how quickly the world turned rare gifts into royal tools. Back at Silvercrest, Cashin received a message that changed everything. A group of ancient records from the royal archives had been uncovered, revealing a name that had been erased from history. Whitmore. He stared at the document for a long moment. The same name he had heard when Elena introduced herself. The same name he had dismissed because he believed he already understood her. Mason watched his expression carefully. "What did you find?" Cashin slowly placed the record on the table. "I think we made a mistake." Outside the castle, the wind moved through the mountains surrounding Silvercrest. Inside, the Alpha King who had once believed he had all the answers was finally facing the truth. Elena was never the person who needed to prove her worth. He was the one who had failed to see it. The old royal archives of Silvercrest had remained untouched for decades, hidden beneath the eastern wing of the castle where only the highest members of the pack were allowed to enter. Cashin Veilheart had walked through those halls many times before, but never with the feeling he had now. Every step felt heavier. Every piece of history around him seemed to hold a question he was not ready to answer. Mason Blackwood placed another ancient record on the table. "These documents were sealed by the previous Alpha Kings," he explained. "Someone wanted this information forgotten." Cashin opened the worn pages carefully. His eyes stopped on a familiar name. Whitmore. For generations, the Whitmore family had been known as the Heartkeepers of the werewolf world. They were not warriors. They did not seek crowns. Their gift was understanding the connection between wolves, packs, and the emotions that held them together. Cashin remembered all the small moments he had ignored. Elena calming a frightened young wolf during a storm. Elena helping rival pack members find common ground during a dispute. Elena knowing when someone was hurting even before they spoke. He had seen those moments, but he had never understood them. "She was not just an Omega," Cashin said quietly. Mason looked at him. "No. She was the person who kept this pack connected while everyone else was focused on power." The words stayed with Cashin. For years, he had believed leadership meant standing above everyone else. He believed a king needed to make difficult choices without hesitation. But now he wondered if he had confused being distant with being strong. Across the mountains, Elena continued her quiet life away from Silvercrest. She spent her mornings helping the local community and her evenings studying the old journals her family had protected for generations. She had accepted that she might never return to the royal pack. Yet a part of her still felt the invisible pull of the mate bond she had never asked for and never denied. She placed a hand over the old family journal and whispered, "I cannot let my past decide my future." Elena knew the truth about the bond. A mate connection was powerful, but it was not a command. It was not a reason to surrender her choices. It had to be something both people willingly protected. Back at Silvercrest, the council gathered after hearing about the discovered records. Seraphina Crow, one of the oldest voices in the royal court, stepped forward. "The Whitmore bloodline creates complications," she said. "If Elena's abilities become known, every pack will want influence over her." Cashin looked at her with a cold expression. "She is not a resource to control." The room became silent. It was the first time Cashin had defended Elena without thinking about politics, without thinking about appearances. Seraphina studied him carefully. "You sound different, Your Majesty." Cashin looked toward the castle windows, where the mountains disappeared into the evening sky. "Maybe I am finally seeing clearly." That night, something unexpected happened. The mate bond that had remained painful and distant since Elena left suddenly changed. It was not stronger because of possession. It was different because Cashin finally understood what he had lost. Far away, Elena felt the same shift. She closed her eyes, surprised by the warmth of the connection. But instead of running back, she stayed where she was. Because if Cashin wanted another chance, he would have to find her not as a king searching for what belonged to him, but as a man ready to earn what he once failed to value. For the first time in years, Alpha King Cashin Veilheart left Silvercrest without a royal escort, without a council meeting, and without the weight of a crown on his shoulders. He traveled through the mountains alone, following the path that led away from the kingdom and toward the small town where Elena Whitmore had chosen to begin again. He told himself he was going there for answers. He told himself he needed to understand the truth behind the Whitmore legacy. But deep down, he knew the real reason. He needed to face the person he had hurt. When Cashin arrived at the quiet healing center where Elena worked, he saw something he never expected. She was laughing with a group of local pack members, completely comfortable in a place far away from the pressure of the throne. She looked peaceful, free. For a moment, Cashin simply stood there, realizing that Elena had built a life without needing anything from him. Elena noticed him moments later. The warmth in her expression disappeared, replaced by calm distance. "Your Majesty," she said, "I did not expect to see you here." Cashin lowered his head slightly. "I know." The simple answer surprised her. There was no command in his voice, no royal authority, just honesty. "I came because I owe you the truth," he continued. Elena looked at him quietly. "The truth is that you made your choice." Her words were gentle, but they carried years of disappointment. Cashin accepted them. "You are right." He paused before continuing. "I thought protecting the kingdom meant ignoring what I felt. I thought being an Alpha King meant choosing duty over everything else." Elena looked away toward the mountains. "And now," Cashin took a slow breath. "Now I think I forgot that a kingdom is not protected by a person who refuses to understand the people around him." The words stayed between them. Elena had imagined this moment many times before. She imagined anger. She imagined asking why she was not enough. But now that he was standing in front of her, she realized she did not need those answers anymore. She needed to know if he had truly changed. "Do you miss me?" she asked. "Or do you miss what I did for your pack?" Cashin did not answer immediately. That hesitation told her everything. Not because he had no answer, but because he wanted to give the right one. "At first," he admitted, "I missed the peace you brought. The way problems seemed smaller when you were around." Elena remained silent. "But that was not the whole truth," Cashin continued. "I missed the way you looked at me when everyone else only saw a king. I missed the person I was when I was with you." For the first time, Elena saw something different in him. Not weakness, not defeat. Something harder to find in a powerful man. Humility. But before she could respond, a message arrived from Silvercrest. Mason had sent urgent news. The Royal Council was questioning Cashin's decisions. Rumors about Elena's hidden bloodline had begun spreading among the packs. The same people who once ignored her were now afraid of what she represented. Cashin looked at the message, then back at Elena. "They are going to make you a target." Elena shook her head softly. "No, Cashin. They are going to reveal who they truly are." The bond between them stirred quietly, not demanding, not forcing, just reminding them that something unfinished remained between them. Cashin knew he could not fix the past with one apology. He could not erase the night he rejected her. But as he stood there, facing the woman who had walked away with her dignity intact, he made a promise to himself. This time, he would not ask Elena to follow his world. He would prove that he was willing to step into hers. When Cashin Veilheart returned to Silvercrest, he knew the castle would not welcome him the way it once had. The moment he stepped into the royal chamber, he felt the tension in the room. The council members were waiting. Their expressions were calm, but their questions carried suspicion. "You traveled beyond the territory without informing the council," Serafina Crow said. "You spoke with Elena Whitmore privately. Do you understand the concerns this creates?" Cashin looked around the room at the leaders who had spent years shaping every decision of the kingdom. "I understand the concerns," he replied. "But I also understand that we have been ignoring the truth." A quiet murmur moved through the chamber. Serafina stepped forward. "The truth is that an Omega with unknown abilities cannot suddenly become part of royal leadership." Cashin's expression hardened. "Elena is not a position. She is not a political advantage. She is a person." Those words surprised everyone, including himself. For years, Cashin had spoken like a king first and a man second. Now, for the first time, he was defending someone without calculating what he could gain. Mason stood beside him, watching the room carefully. He knew this was not just about Elena. This was about whether Silvercrest would continue following old traditions or finally change. Meanwhile, Elena returned to the small mountain town where she had built her new life. She knew the rumors had already started spreading. Some packs believed she had hidden her abilities to gain influence. Others believed she had been waiting for a chance to challenge the royal family. None of them knew the real reason. Elena had hidden because she had spent her entire life watching powerful people decide what Omega lives were worth. She refused to become another symbol controlled by others. That evening, Cassian arrived again, but this time he did not come with a royal request. He came with a decision. The council will challenge my leadership, he told her. Elena looked at him carefully. Because of me? Cassian shook his head. Because I am questioning a system that was easier to protect than to change. Elena looked surprised. She had expected him to ask her to return. She had expected him to speak about their bond. Instead, he was talking about responsibility. You know they may never accept me, she said. Cassian nodded. I know. And you may lose support because of this. I know. Elena studied his face. Then why are you doing it? Cassian was quiet for a moment. Because the first time I made a choice, I chose what everyone expected from me. I will not make that mistake again. The words reached a place inside Elena that she thought she had closed forever. But before she could answer, a new message arrived from Silvercrest. The council had called an emergency gathering. Several pack leaders were demanding proof that Elena's bloodline could be trusted. They wanted answers. They wanted control. As Cassian read the message, Elena noticed the change in his expression. The Alpha King was worried. Not for his throne. Not for his reputation. For her. Cassian, she said quietly. If I come back, it cannot be because you need me to save your kingdom. He looked at her. I know. It cannot be because of the mate bond. He nodded. I know. Elena took a breath. Then if I stand beside you, it will be because I choose to. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The bond between them remained, but this time it felt different. It was no longer a force pulling them together. It was a promise waiting to be earned. And when they returned to Silvercrest together, every member of the pack would have to face a truth they had avoided for too long. The Omega they underestimated was about to stand before them, not asking for acceptance, but showing them why she deserved respect. The return to Silvercrest was not the homecoming Elena Whitmore once imagined. Years ago, she had walked through those gates hoping she would finally be seen. This time, she entered knowing exactly who she was, whether anyone accepted her or not. The royal courtyard was filled with members of different packs who had traveled to witness the emergency gathering. Their eyes followed her. Some were curious. Some were uncertain. Others still carried the same doubt she had faced before. Cassian Veilheart walked beside her, but he did not step in front of her. Elena noticed that immediately. The old Cassian would have protected her by making decisions for her. This Cassian understood that standing beside someone was different from speaking for them. Inside the great hall, the council waited. Seraphina Crow stood near the center of the room, holding the ancient records that revealed Elena's bloodline. The question before this gathering is simple, Seraphina announced. Can we trust someone whose family has hidden their true abilities from the packs for generations? The room became quiet. Elena looked around at the faces watching her. She could feel the old fear returning, the same fear that had followed her family for years. But this time, she did not lower her eyes. You are asking the wrong question, Elena said. Everyone turned toward her. You are asking whether you can trust me. But you should be asking why my family believed they needed to hide in the first place. Her words created a silence deeper than any argument. Elena explained the truth. The Whitmore gift was never created to control packs or influence alpha leaders. It existed to protect balance. Her ancestors had helped wolves and humans understand each other during times when fear divided communities. We were never meant to rule, Elena said. We were meant to remind leaders that power without compassion destroys the very people they are trying to protect. Cassian watched her from across the room. He had seen Elena be kind. He had seen her be patient. But this was different. This was the strength she had always carried quietly. Mason leaned closer and whispered, "The entire room is listening." Cassian nodded. They should have listened years ago. But not everyone was convinced. A pack leader from the Western Territory questioned Elena's intentions. If you have this ability, why should anyone believe you will not use it for your own advantage? Elena looked at him calmly. Because I spent my entire life hiding something that could have given me power. If power was what I wanted, I would have revealed myself long ago. The answer reached even those who doubted her. Later that evening, Cashin found Elena standing near the old castle gardens. The same place where she had once told him she wanted a simple life away from politics. "You were incredible today," he said. Elena smiled slightly. "I was honest." Cashin looked toward the castle walls. "I spent years thinking leadership meant never showing uncertainty." Elena turned toward him. "And now?" He looked at her. "Now I think a real leader is someone who can admit when they were wrong." The moment between them was interrupted by the sound of the royal bell. A new message had arrived from the council chamber. The next challenge would not be about Elena's past. It would be about Cashin's future. The council was preparing a vote that could decide whether he remained Alpha King. And for the first time, Cashin realized the greatest test of his leadership would not be protecting the throne. It would be proving he was willing to change it. The royal bell of Silvercrest had not been heard 3 times in a single night for more than a century. It was a signal reserved for moments when the future of the kingdom stood at a turning point. By sunrise, every major pack leader had gathered inside the Great Hall. The question before them was not about Elena Whitmore anymore. It was about Cashin Veilheart. The Alpha King who had ruled with certainty for years was now being asked to answer for the choices he had made. Seraphina Crow stood before the council, her voice calm but firm. A king cannot allow personal feelings to influence the future of every pack under his protection. Cashin listened without interruption. He knew this moment was coming. For most of his life, he had believed that being challenged meant showing strength. But now he understood that strength was not about refusing to change. It was about accepting the truth when change was necessary. "You believe Elena has affected my judgment," Cashin said. Seraphina nodded. "I believe the mate bond has made you forget your responsibility." The room became silent. Everyone waited for Cashin's response. Elena stood among the gathered leaders, watching him carefully. She knew what this moment meant. If Cashin chose the throne over honesty, nothing between them would truly change. Cashin looked around the hall where generations of Alpha Kings had made decisions before him. Then he looked at Elena. "You are right about one thing," he said. "The mate bond has changed me." A few members of the council exchanged uncertain looks. "But not because it made me weaker," Cashin continued. "It forced me to see the things I refused to see before." He stepped forward. "I ignored someone who brought peace to this kingdom because I was afraid of changing traditions. I judged someone I never truly understood. That was not leadership." His words surprised everyone. Even Elena felt her heart shift slightly. She had expected Cashin to defend himself. Instead, he was admitting his mistakes in front of the entire pack. Later that day, Elena found him outside the royal chamber, standing beneath the stone archway overlooking the mountains. "You did not have to say all of that," she said. Cashin looked at her. "Yes, I did." Elena studied his expression. "You could lose your crown." He gave a small, thoughtful smile. "A crown that only survives because people are afraid to question it is not worth protecting." Those words stayed with her. She realized Cashin was no longer trying to prove he was worthy of being king. He was trying to become the kind of leader the kingdom actually needed. But the council's decision was still uncertain. The final vote would happen in 2 days, and the old traditions still had many supporters. That evening, Elena discovered another hidden record among her family journals. It revealed something even more surprising. The Heartkeepers were never chosen by blood alone. They were chosen when an alpha leader proved they valued the people over the throne. Elena read the words twice, realizing the meaning behind them. The bond between a Heartkeeper and an alpha was not created to give a king more power. It existed to test whether that power could be trusted. When Cashin found her, he noticed the expression on her face. "What did you discover?" he asked. Elena closed the journal slowly. "The bond was never meant to make me your queen." Cashin looked confused. "Then what was it meant to do?" Elena met his eyes. "It was meant to show whether you were ready to become the kind of king this kingdom deserves." For the first time, Cashin understood that winning Elena's trust was not the final reward. It was the beginning of proving he had truly changed. But before they could discuss what came next, another message arrived from the council. The final gathering would not only decide Cashin's position. It would reveal a secret someone inside Silvercrest had been hiding for years. The final gathering of Silvercrest began under a heavy silence. Every major pack leader had returned to the royal hall, but this time, the atmosphere was different. Everyone knew this was not just a decision about a king. It was a decision about the future of the entire werewolf community. Cashin Veilheart stood before the council without his crown. He had chosen to leave it on the royal table behind him. To everyone watching, the message was clear. He was not standing there to protect a title. He was standing there to answer for his choices. Seraphina Crow stepped forward with a sealed document in her hands. "Before this council makes its decision," she said, "there is one truth that must be revealed." Elena Whitmore looked at the document carefully. Something about Seraphina's expression told her this was not just another political challenge. "For generations," Seraphina continued, "the royal records have stated that the Heartkeeper line disappeared because the bloodline ended." She opened the document. That was not true. The room reacted immediately. Cashin looked toward her, surprised. "What are you saying?" Seraphina turned toward Elena. The Whitmore family was hidden, not lost. The previous council protected the secret because they feared what would happen if an Omega with this gift became known. A wave of whispers moved through the hall. Elena felt the weight of every eye on her. She had spent her entire life hiding because of that fear. Now the truth was finally standing in the open. But then Seraphina continued. "However, there is another part of the record. The Heartkeeper cannot serve beside an Alpha who rules through fear. The bond only remains when the Alpha chooses responsibility over control." Everyone looked at Cashin. The meaning was clear. The final test was not about Elena's abilities. It was about whether Cashin had truly changed. One of the pack leaders stepped forward. "Then the choice is simple. Cashin must prove that he can put the kingdom before personal attachment." Elena listened carefully. She knew what that meant. If Cashin rejected old traditions, he risked losing support. If he protected the system that had hurt her, he would lose the trust they had slowly rebuilt. Cashin looked around the room. "For years, I believed being Alpha meant carrying every burden alone. I believed a king had to stand above everyone else." He paused. "I was wrong." The hall became completely quiet. A leader who refuses to listen is not protecting a kingdom. He is only protecting himself. Mason watched with pride as Cashin continued. "Elena does not need my crown. She does not need my permission to be valuable. She never did." Elena felt those words more deeply than she expected, because they were the words she had needed to hear the night he rejected her. But now they were being spoken in front of everyone. Not privately. Not when it was easy. Publicly. Cashin turned toward Elena. "I cannot change what happened before, but I can choose what happens next." Elena held his gaze. The bond between them was calm, steady, and stronger than before. Not because fate demanded it, because trust was beginning to replace the pain. But just as the council prepared to make its final decision, a messenger entered the hall with unexpected news. The person who had hidden the truth about the Whitmore family had been identified, and the secret was connected to someone Elena had trusted since returning to Silvercrest. The room fell silent again, because the greatest threat to the new future they were building was not outside the kingdom. It had been standing among them all along. The Great Hall of Silvercrest had never felt so quiet. Every pack leader stood waiting as the messenger stepped forward with the final piece of information that would change everything. For years, the kingdom believed the Whitmore family had simply disappeared. But the truth was more complicated. The secret had not been hidden by Elena's family. It had been hidden by members of the old royal council who feared losing control over the future of the pack. The messenger placed the final record on the table. The decision to erase the Whitmore name from royal history was made by the council generations ago, he said. The purpose was to prevent the Heartkeeper line from influencing Alpha leadership. The room turned toward the remaining council members. Some looked away. Others lowered their heads. Elena stood quietly, feeling the weight of the moment. She had spent years wondering why her family had been forced to hide. Now she finally had her answer. But instead of anger, she felt something unexpected. Peace. Because the truth meant she had never been the problem. She had never been too different, too powerful, or too much. She had simply lived in a world that was afraid of what it could not control. Cashin stepped forward. Everyone expected him to demand punishment or protect the reputation of the crown. Instead, he did something no Alpha King before him had done. He admitted the failure of the system he inherited. A kingdom cannot move forward if it refuses to face its own mistakes, Cashin said. The crown exists to serve the people, not to silence them. His words changed the atmosphere in the hall. The same pack members who once questioned Elena began to see her differently, not as a threat, not as a symbol, as a person who had carried a burden she never asked for. The council vote came shortly after. Cashin remained Alpha King, but only after agreeing to reform the traditions that had allowed fear and pride to guide decisions for generations. The new laws protected the rights of every pack member, including Omegas who had long been ignored. Later that evening, Elena stood on the castle balcony overlooking the mountains. The same mountains she had watched from a distance when she left Silvercrest. Cashin joined her, but he did not stand above her. He stood beside her. "I know I cannot erase what happened," he said. Elena looked at him. "No, you cannot." Cashin nodded. He accepted the truth without trying to escape it. "But I hope I can spend the rest of my life proving that I learned from it." Elena smiled softly. "That is the difference between someone who wants power and someone who deserves it." The mate bond between them remained, but it no longer felt like a destiny they had no choice but to follow. It became something they chose every day, a connection built on respect, honesty, and trust. Months later, Silvercrest was no longer known only as the kingdom of the strongest alpha. It became known as the kingdom where old traditions changed, where voices once ignored were finally heard, and where leadership meant more than wearing a crown. Cashin Veilheart learned that being an Alpha King was not about standing above everyone else. It was about having the courage to stand with them. Elena Whitmore learned that being an Omega was never a weakness. It was a strength the world had failed to recognize. And together, they proved something that future generations would remember. A true bond is not created by power. It is not protected by fear. It survives because two people choose, again and again, to see each other clearly. Because sometimes the person everyone overlooks is the one who has been holding everything together all along.